Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks where kindred souls gather together to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as the February Room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for composite development fly rods and accessories. 40 years of Kiwi ingenuity and graphite technology now available at cd-fishing.us or your local CD USA dealer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And remember to go fishing. Here's your host, the Carnops, and this is the February Room.
I have the privilege today of sitting in with Tom Latourelle, who is one of our premier custom fly tyers here in western Montana. So I've known Tom for a while. See him at the boat ramps, see him at the shop. Sometimes I see him at the hot tub at the YMCA. But
yes,
we
do see each other at the hot tub of the YMCA. That is very true. I love it, and that's the perfect introduction.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to get a chance to sit here, Tom, and watch you tie some bugs for Baja.
Oh, it's on there. It's on there. I'm looking for that. That's what I'm looking for.
The thread.
Yeah, I'm looking for my mono thread.
Well, we got it on there. Did you glue it?
I did glue it, I think.
All right.
I did a little dab of super glue. Over precaution, probably not necessary whatsoever, but I do it anyways.
No, I like that move. I'm gonna steal that one from you. You've already taught me something, and we just started, so I'm looking forward to seeing how you create this fly. This fly is called the Kinky Muddler, right?
Yes, Johnny King's Kinky Muddler. We're tying my bastardization of Johnny's fly, mainly because I couldn't figure out how Mr. King gets that SF to get such a good head.
Yeah, so you've kind of tweaked it.
So I've tweaked it and started using materials that are a little more friendly for me, which is EP or SF or Doug Brewer's Congo hair. All are suitable.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't the only one that was having that problem with that stuff, man. Because
no, I struggled.
I reverted to EP fibers, and my heads looked way cleaner.
Yep. Yeah, it's it's not as coarse, so it's a little bit easier to manage. I also, I don't know how much of it is to my knowledge, Johnny is not a commercial tire, and I think when you watch some of those videos, not that I don't put a lot in the trash can, because I do, but I think he trims a lot off, right? Like he's tying, you saw, I'll take those hanks and I'll cut them down so they're kind of pre-tapered. He just pulls off a clump, ties it on, whacks it off, ties on another clump, whacks it off.
Which is what I do too, but you have to pay attention to the economy of it.
I try to.
Yeah.
I try to, and then throughout tying all of these things, I realized, well, if I take a hank and cut a pile of in thirds, well, there's my first station, and then I cut a pile of quarters, there's my second station, and then I've got some taper going on right off the get-go when I go to trim, instead of trimming, a huge amount off. So I guess it's part economy and part process. Like trying to, it's also still economy, I guess, right? Economize your process, economize.
Yeah.
I don't think the material's as big a deal. Economy of materials is as big a deal as, except for the feathers, except for the chicken.
Yeah. Well,
the chicken's a hard find. It's expensive.
Don't want to waste any of this stuff though. I always feel like I'm a really inefficient tire with materials, and I leave a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor.
Yep. So there's my thirds. If I were down here on this beautiful day doing this like I normally do.
Yeah, you don't even have a window crack down here, man. This is full dungeon.
Full dungeon.
On the nicest day of the year.
Full dungeon. I know. I should have a window. Window's cracked upstairs. It's the wrong place for it, isn't it?
So you've got your tail of bucktail.
Got my tail of
A
bucktail.
little bit of white bucktail rolled around the hook shank to reduce fouling.
Correct. Got a new pack of, speaking of materials, I got a new pack of flash fiber.
So do you watch, like you obviously watched Johnny King's YouTube video to learn kind of the basics of this fly?
Yes.
That was your introduction to it, or did you go...
I knew it from stripers on the East Coast.
This fly?
The Kinky Muddler.
The Kinky Muddler. Okay. Oh, gotcha.
Yep. No, I knew about
Gotcha.
the Kinky, and then Mr. Wilcox asked about Kinkies for his stuff down in Baja, and asked if I knew it, and I said, yeah, I know that fly. I don't tie it very well, and now
you do.
Now 3-4 years removed, I think I tie it pretty well, and it's kind of morphed into my own variation of it.
Yeah, it's funny. When I asked John Wilcox,
Yep.
local outfitter who hosts trips down to Baja and kind of serves as a booking agent. I don't. He's on location though for a couple months out of the year, right?
Yeah.
With groups
he's
down
usually
there?
down there for the month of May and then month of October. Maybe
So-
into early November, depending on what he's got going on in Magdalena on the other side.
On the other side, right? Magdalena Bay, which is the hot spot for billfish and
Yeah, sight casting nonetheless.
yeah, that looks
Being
really
able
cool,
to
man.
sight cast. I don't have any of those to show you, but I can show you the hooks, Justin. Look at these things. You don't want to end up with one of these in your hand.
No, you don't, man. You don't. No.
An 8.0 blue water hook.
Yep, I tied it. I still have some billfish flies somewhere. I tied a bunch. I went to Guatemala many years ago with my dad, and I've actually been down there twice. But the second time I went, I tied, and my flies all held together. Man, I was stoked. They all held. They ate them.
It's awesome.
Yeah, those fish down there. Those sailfish down out of Guatemala. A lot of the billfish folks I've come to discover refer to those as the cutthroat of the sea.
Do they like lazy water too?
Perfect for my fly selection.
Right, that's awesome.
It was cool. But yeah, so Lauren booked a trip with John, and she's heading down there here any day. So when I asked him about flies, he recommended this specific fly. He's like, Kinky Muddler's a good one. Sent me several photos. I looked at them and I was like, oh boy. So yeah, I found that. Well, I think he sent me the link to that Johnny King video, and I started tying it, and it was immediately kind of one of those flies where I'm like, you know what? I think I want to sit down and watch somebody do this.
Yeah.
It's done it a bit. So thanks for letting me come join you in your dungeon today in your February room and seeing your process here, because already I can tell that you've found a way to overcome some of the issues some of the hurdles that I was having with materials, and all starts with good saddle hackle, which I don't currently have in my selection either.
And as soon as you get out of the strung stuff, do you have any old dry necks or dry?
No, I don't.
I've even pulled out some of those color variations I was showing you are off of some saddles that I bought when I was a kid, or my mom probably bought them for me. I was like, oh, there's a nice dun that'll go. And they're not dry fly saddle. They're not, dry fly saddle from 30 years ago is not.
Right. Yeah.
it's tailing hackle now.
What you're looking for, yeah.
So, but it is what you're looking for color variations on some of these things.
No, I don't. All of my old fly tying stuff has just been chewed up by my kids, which is
and that's
it's
awesome.
Great, man. Yeah, they go down there and tie flies. The two of them will go in there sometimes and just spend a couple hours, and I don't even want to go look at it.
Yep.
And to see the devastation.
Well, and it's cool because you say that my oldest hasn't had a ton of interest in it until just recently.
That's cool.
And so that's actually something that I was really hoping to do with her this summer, is get her tying, because I think she's loves art and she's detail oriented, and I think she'd really do well. So there's another trick too. When that's, you got one end that's tapered, when it comes out of that hank, I just 50-50 it and spin it around.
Oh, yeah.
And then now I got a pretty even bunch.
Yep.
It's kind of a combination. I do the tails pretty much like king, tented, kind of obliquely off the top of the shank, so there forms a little triangle. I do the first station or two of this stuff, or the first station V-tied like he does, which is you lay the little clump of material crossways across the top of the shank, bottom of the shank, and then tie it back at about a 45 off the shank probably.
Rotary vise really helps for this fly.
Totally. Absolutely does.
I'm tying on an old Dynaking right now that, it's offset, so you can't flip the fly. It makes this fly a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is a pain. That's a very...
It's hard.
And I mean, I just got that old HMH just straight perpendicular to the floor, or parallel to the floor.
Yeah, which is what you want.
And I even tie my trout flies like that. I never got into that true rotary stuff with the wrapping and all that. I like being able to have my hands,
Mm-hmm.
I can set them on there. You've got good access to everything. So a little throwback on that.
Yeah, you got an old Regal sitting over there too?
I got the old Regal over there.
Nice. No Norvise?
No Norvise.
Man, I had a Norvise. Somebody gave me one years ago, and it just sat idle, and I gave it away.
Yep.
And I kind of wish I wouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, and that would be your vice for these things right now.
That'd be a good vice. Exactly, man. Exactly. Once I started tying this, I was like, man, I need to upgrade my vice. I've got enough life out of it.
Yeah.
Every time I think about Baja, it recalls this one fish that I'll never forget. I went down there a number of years ago and chased rooster fish off the beach.
Fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. Caught some smaller ones, and then caught some nice jacks, and those ladyfish down there are a freaking hoot, man. We were catching those ladyfish down there, and they were a really fun fish. But I finally did get a shot at a big grande, and man, it followed the fly all the way up to this cut. I was off this beach with a pretty steep drop off, and about 40 feet out or so there was like this noticeable color change. It was a bright sunny day, and there was a little bit of gloom out there in the algae, and the fish followed it through the algae, was just right on it, comb out of the air. I was just waiting for it to eat it, and man, it hit that color change. Its mouth was open right behind the fly, and it shut its mouth and turned and vanished, and swam out of my life forever. And I'll never forget that fish.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
Those are the best ones. I think I maybe have just as good of memories of missing fish or coming unpinned early than some of the other, than some of the stuff I've caught.
Victories.
Yeah. I have a very similar experience. It was out of the boat, and we'd fished all week, and then the grandes finally showed up.
This was last October. Down with Wilcox and Bahia de las Sueños.
Yes, it was. Okay. And we were just south of Sueños towards Bariles, and we finally saw them. There was 2 or 3 of these big ones that came in. They're mixed in with smaller ones, and I made a good shot. It was on it, looking at it, and then I decided to just come tight. I wanted to make sure I was tight to the fly when it ate. And as soon as I moved it maybe 2 inches, and as soon as it saw the movement of the fish or the fly, it just turned off and peeled right off. And I did it twice, and then finally the second time, the guide was yelling at me that it was dead. They were eating the dead fish down below the small fish who were knocking down all the bait fish.
The big grandes were
grandes were being smart. They were nice and lazy down low.
That's so interesting to watch those specific feeding behaviors that occur.
Yep.
In the salt. I think we kind of, at least until I started saltwater fishing, I didn't anticipate that kind of selectivity that we see like with trout, right?
Yep. Yeah, totally. And I mean, we even have a variation of this that we fish dead. The dropper nymph.
The dropper nymph.
The dropper nymph. You can't escape the dropper nymph.
Well, I need some of those. I've got nothing dead in my small fly selection so far that I've put together, and I've already made a lot of mistakes, wasted some hooks. I started off tying on real cheap hooks when I started playing around with these flies. So I'm like, yeah, there's going to be some trial and error for me.
I know the drill. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to go take a $1.50 hook and put it in the vise and then tie something you don't want on there.
Yeah. You got a hell of a glue selection too. I was marveling at this. So
the glues. I love the glues. I love experimenting with the glues. The hardware store glues.
Freaking glue connoisseur.
Connoisseur glue. Yep. Like you said, a lot of glue sniffing going on down in the dungeon. And some of that, most of that has come out of the quest for durability with these things. Just hadn't had really good luck with durability and the fancy UV cure resins. So, and I think that's one of the things that Johnny King will mention multiple times is I think he was probably responsible for getting me to think alternatively about glues. So we got that tied, the 2 stations, then we'll go to trim it.
Yeah, you whipped that out fast, man.
Yeah, see, they do get that, and that's part of the reason why I dropped down to 2. Like I said, those other ones, there's 3, 4 of these things, and then you got too much material.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know about you with trout flies, but I like sparse trout flies as well. Mm-hmm. And
that's something that's definitely developed over time. Like I look back at the flies that I tied early on, and they're all so clunky and heavy and overdressed and
well, and there's did you see that one there, right? There's that little bump where that transition was, and then that's one snip, and then I have my line through there. So part of that, efficiency or economy of the material that we were talking about earlier is directly related to this process too, the trimming. Mm-hmm. And I like to think of it as it gives me 2 points, and then you just connect the points. I spent a lot of time in the furniture shop, 20-something years, and, connecting lines, doing all sorts of crazy stuff with wood.
Did you build furniture?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I built furniture for a number of years.
Here?
Here and back east. I was part of the New Hampshire Furniture Masters.
Oh, wow.
Okay. When we were living in Vermont.
So you're a craftsman. That explains.
Yeah, it explains a lot. It explains a lot of this, right?
It does. Yeah. I am not a craftsman, and it's hard to be a fly tyer when you're not a craftsman.
Yeah, and then the process too, right? Like I like the process and figuring out process. So there's a perfect example of why we go to the beauty store and we get the thinning shears. Mm-hmm. Is take that little chunk out there, and then we've got a nice belly transition.
Yeah, there's definitely a big difference between a craftsman and a fly fisherman who ties flies.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met folks like you who are craftsmen.
Yep.
And their fly tying always makes me jealous. So I'm like, I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah.
But I don't really have. I don't have that kind of a brain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting stuff, isn't it? Right, like.
And, just being meticulous about things and then being consistent. The consistency is what I always struggle with.
Yep. And I think consistency is good because you want them, it goes 2 ways. I think especially with the bigger format stuff, which is, I never would have thought that I'd be tying saltwater flies right now. And I would say that salt and freshwater streamers, or maybe just predatory flies, compromises the bulk of my tying. And it's cool because the format, the large format, is craftsman-like in the sense that you're building something that's large. Hopefully you feed multiple fish with, or at least I want to feed multiple fish with, because I don't want to have to tie it off. I only want to, clip a leader and take an abrasion off and then retie the same fly. I don't want to have to go to, another $10, $12, $15 fly. I want to, I want to get the most out of one and fish it until it's not fishing anymore, or the hook needs to be sharpened or something like that. So the large format tying is almost like a blend of, furniture and such, but on a smaller scale. Because there's a lot of stuff like you enter into how stuff swims, how it acts, all that stuff. And that's fun. That's part of that process that I think is super fun. So the first weird glue we got is the Gorilla Clear Grip contact adhesive.
Which is just going to be a lot faster and more user-friendly than like 5-minute epoxy, which is what I've always used for eyes for all these years. And it's just, it's more time-consuming. And
it works well with the fiber,
This glue?
Yeah, it works really well with fiber heads. Like I was telling you earlier, anything that I put a stick-on eye on, I use this stuff. Even if I don't glue over the top like we do with the Kinky, we put another glue on there to reinforce after we get the eyes on.
And you grew up in Vermont, right, Tom?
I did. I grew up in Manchester, Vermont.
And you were pretty close to the Orvis store, and as a kid you'd go down there and tie flies?
I would walk down. I would walk down, and a couple of the tires that were in there showed me a bunch of stuff when I was, 9, 10 years old. And then it got to the point where I'd just walk down, and I'd walk in, and they'd wave and say hi, and I'd go pick materials that I wanted, and I'd sit there and I'd tie flies for a few hours, and tourists and people coming into the store would, wonder why there's a 10-year-old kid tying flies.
That's cool.
Which is kind of cool. It was fun. A lot of good streams. I grew up on the Bat and Kill. So there's that. Eyes on with the weird glue. E6000 also works. I think that's the original one.
That's the one Johnny King mentions, I think.
Yeah, it's the same. And the reason I ended up with this is it's the same stuff, but,
Get it right down the
Ace
road.
Ace was out of the E6000 the last time I went down, and this is the same stuff.
Cool. Good to know.
So yeah, then that goes up on the nail board, dries. Doesn't need too long to dry. And then when I get a batch of these things with the eyes on, and I'll do them step, I'll tie it's usually a pack of hooks. So 8, I think these are running. So 8 or 10, and then trim them when they come out of the vise. And then I set them aside, and then I'll put all the eyes on, because once you get the glue out, it's easier to do 10 or however many you got. So eye them all and set them aside, and then come back and put a skim coat of diluted liquid fusion over the EP or Congo hair or sculpting flash fiber, whatever you used for the front of the fly. And that'll help with fouling, and you pull that back to about the bend of the hook. Usually it'll hold the head shape. And I also think it gives some structure to the front so that the chicken really kicks. And when you swim these, that's the one thing that's super cool, especially when you watch a sardina swim. The tail's just always fluttering. And that's what these do when you move them. And the chicken moves around when it's not moving too. It really does. So,
and what's cool is, between you and Wilcox, you guys kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's going on down in Baja too, right? So like if he gets back and he's like, "Hey Tom, the sardinas are this big this year, and this is what we need," so you can create a specific fly selection to one of the groups or clients that's going down there.
Totally.
Really dial them in like in real time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, usually I'll give him a little care package before he heads down. He'll get down there, fish for a little while, see what clients are doing with fish and flies, and then as people go down, there's usually one or two groups at least per, I guess session or whatever you want to call it per, either May or October. There's usually one or two Missoula people going down, and I'll get a WhatsApp from them or something that says bigger, smaller, more green, more tan. And then the tan, right? We were talking earlier about why tan works down there, and I wondered, I tied these things for a couple years, and always wondered why tan would work with a fish that when you Google image search it, comes up blue.
Yeah. Right. Sardinas are blue.
They're blue.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're a little bit of black and whatever else in there. Well, and they're still blue even in the when you pull them out of the live well, they're still blue because the captains down there will throw them. You go get your bait in the morning, and then they'll go to a place where they know there's fish or they think there's fish, and then throw a handful of these things out there to try to entice and then also bring them in so it's casting distance and get the boat set up and all that stuff. And they're still blue. I remember getting on the boat the first day in October there, and that was the first thing I checked was like, what did these things look like? How do they feel when you pick up one? Because that large format stuff it is a bait, and these things have volume, they have length, girth, they tactile thing when you pick up a sardine in your hand. And I said, yeah, they're blue all right. And then the first handful went into the water, and as soon as they hit the water, the backs on all of them turned tan.
That's crazy.
So I said, well, that's why tan works, I guess. It's pretty wild.
That's bizarre, man. Yeah, I wondered the same thing after I tied like half a dozen blue sardinas. Mm-hmm. And then I talked to Josh Lauer, who went down there, and he showed me one of his flies, and I was like, wait, that's tan. Then I stopped into the Bend fly shop last time when I was in Bend, and the guy down there has been down with Wilcox a couple times, and he sold me one of those. What is the Montana Fly Company production fly called? You've got one here.
Yeah, it's the Oshana. It's
got a weird name.
It does. Nyack.
Yeah, something like that.
Nyack baitfish or something like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, James's pattern.
Tan and white fly. So
tan and white, olive and white.
I'm like, why is everything tan? That's interesting to hear you say that. So that.
And it is good to have variety. I have colors through the spectrum. I do have some blue ones, got some olives. That is the one exception. It does seem like olive and then sometimes brown, like a medium kind of brown, which has been really hard to find the medium brown chicken. That's been the hardest part.
Right.
Mainly what we have is that like chocolate. You can find that chocolate stuff pretty easily, but it's generally too dark. It's kind of between that tan we were talking about. And then I also go, almost all of them start out with two white saddle hackles. And then from there, a lot of times I'll leave.
Like this is an olive one you got sitting right here.
Yeah,
right?
there's an olive one, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll go two whites, and then olive grizzly, bleached grizzly, ginger's another good one, or tan, just to get some color variation in there. And then sometimes they'll stay all white.
Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is bring a variety.
Bring a variety.
Right?
Yeah. And it's kind of cool to roll down there with a bunch of flies and then fish through, and you always see what you have at the end left over. And October I got some blues left over. I got olives left over. I didn't have many tans. I didn't have many mullet. And to go back to that, the mullet is that mullet, I think they call it mullet in the Sculpting Flash. Yeah, mullet brown.
Yep.
Is definitely one of the better colors, but there's, was there 3-4 colors in there?
Yeah.
There's some gray and a little bit of flash in there. And I think the one advantage of that is the Sculpting Flash is you get that, it's basically the EP fiber with flash mixed in, angel hair or something, which is nice because I don't think you'll ever see a lot of people fishing a lot of super flashy stuff down there. minimal flash.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. It's just EP fibers with flash. And you have a business, right? A custom fly tying business. So you've got, not only do you tie for John and the Missoulian angler,
Yep.
but you've got a list of angling clientele that buy flies specifically from you for...
Yeah, Bespoke bugs.
Bespoke, I love
Bespoke bugs,
it.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that kind of harkened out of the custom furniture world as well. You know, especially the British talk about bespoke furniture. So I just thought that was kind of cool because we're translating the same thing into anglers, you know, and especially when you're spending thousands of dollars on a trip, at least in my mind, I'd want to go, you know, this is where we can separate, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody can go buy commercial flies on the internet at your local fly shop, and that's all fantastic. And I think, you know, to go back to the variety, you should have a handful of custom stuff, and then you should also have some stuff that, you know, the masses have.
Right.
But that's where we can separate ourselves.
Yeah, you've got
different...
a custom dialed in fly selection created for a specific fishery.
Yep.
That's dynamic too. Like you said, like you'll get a text, you'll get a WhatsApp message from somebody that's down there on location and say, hey, we need this color, tweak this a little bit. And then that's really fine tuning a fly selection for a specific locale, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's fun too, because then you kind of, at least tying these, like vicariously, I've been to the Seychelles this year.
Vicariously, yeah. I call it, yes. Vice-cariously.
Vice-cariously,
that's the term I use. I do much more vicarious fishing than I do actual fishing in exotic locations. But anyway, go ahead. So you've been to the Seychelles?
I've been to the Seychelles. I've been to Cuba. I've been to Argentina. I've been to Bolivia, Bahamas, Christmas Island.
That's cool that you mentioned that, because I feel the same way. I feel like somewhat vested in this trip that I'm not on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you know, like
because you're
chomping at the bit. Like, I can't wait to get word what worked, what didn't.
Yeah, and it's fun because it's like, you know, super tactile. Like there's, you know, a response, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I like to go back to the fish story, and usually the ones that stick with me are the ones that don't come to fruition, because there's usually something grand that happens, you know, whether it's a great chase like you were talking about, or, you know, making sure that you're tight when it eats and then it's gone, because you moved it an inch, and like in that setting it's only 45 feet away, and I could see the fly slide 2 inches, and that's all it did.
Wow.
And it was gone, you know, or you know, those trout that just blow stuff up, or, you know, how pike eat a fly, or any of that stuff. It's just, I love feeding fish, you know. I don't necessarily need to touch them. Right. Like, I just like,
as long as,
you know, something that I made on a beautiful May day in the dungeon, you know, an animal, a critter that only needs to reproduce and stay alive and ate something that I made, you know? Yeah. And it's like, to me, that means I fully fooled them. Like, 100% fooled them.
Yep. That's cool.
Like, you thought that was part of the, you know, your regular fare.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what's cool too, is like the connection here, this thing that you created in this basement on a beautiful May day, then travels to, you know, say, a steelhead river in British Columbia, and your fly happens to intercept a fish that, you know, traveled throughout the seas and just happened to be coming up the river at that specific moment, that specific intersection. Yep. To me, that's always a really cool notion.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah. We're nerds, though.
Nerds. Total nerds.
Big time nerds. Here we are down here nerding out and huffing glues. Lots of great selection of glues to huff down here. I'll be back.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you didn't even smell the extreme glue yet.
Oh, God.
You know. No, that's not that bad, actually.
That might have to be for another visit.
The extreme glue could be, unless we tie that reverse tied one. Glue. Less failure with the with the alternative adhesives. That's what we should call them. Alternative adhesives.
Alternative adhesives. There you go. Love it.
Or at least that's what it seems like.
Well, it's always a real pleasure to sit down with a talented fly tyer, a meticulous fly tyer, a creative fly tyer, and learn your process. So I really appreciate you letting me come crash your glue party here today.
Absolutely,
Tom.
Anytime.
If
You're
folks,
always welcome.
all right, man.
Always
Well,
welcome.
I don't live that far away.
Yeah.
I could take the bike trail.
Yes. Get home safely.
Yeah, get home safely. Right, get a DUI driving home after all this glue.
Oh, God.
So Bespoke Bugs, is there? Let's say listeners might want to reach out to you and get a selection of flies going for their destination. So
Yep.
phone number?
As of right now, you got to text me or call me. Still rocking the 802 number, so it's 802-681-3720. Turns out I'm a better craftsman than I am business person. And I have a full sample size of this because this has been for 20-something years across multiple disciplines. I will get a web presence. I'll do the Instagram thing. I got to. And then it's easier for everybody to get in touch. I guess that's the way of the world.
I guess unfortunately for better or worse, man, that's the way of the world. It's kind of the conclusion that a lot of us holdouts have come to.
Yeah. Well, and it's when you like making the stuff, it's like for me, that's the promotion is not the part that I cling to. It's the making, it's the problem solving.
Thanks again for letting me sit in and
Oh, absolutely. It's been a blast.
I'll be back.
Okay.
Thanks, boss.
Yeah, for sure.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.